Welcome back to the channel. I'm always ready to talk about lossless scaling and lossless scaling frame generation. But this time, there's a little twist that we're going to tackle here. And the best way to do this is to show the screen, and so that I can tilt the camera up top as well, so I can show you the settings. But we're going to be looking at the Dynamic FPS Limiter to help us adjust the frame rate instead of just leaving it capped. And we are going to focus on GPU utilization. So let's get into it. Now here, I'm using my Hurricane to use for testing for whatever reason, God of War. And here we are working with Same Salamander 5710, and the work that they have done on this app as first seen in the subreddit for lossless scaling. Now, I am actually using version 4 that is, I believe, like a full pipeline from Python. But the premise is the same here. It said that the app was developed to enhance the gaming experience when using LSG. LSG works faster when the game runs with an FPS app that leaves enough headroom for frame generation on the GPU. But if it hits 100%, that can cause the game's base FPS to drop, and then you can get input lag, etc. Now, arguably, you can use things like NVIDIA Reflex, Telesys, because I believe it leaves just a smidge of headroom. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's why I'm doing the recording this way, because it's like what NVIDIA says, when you use OBS or something like that to record, it's also affecting the GPU also. So there's two ways you hit an FPS gap, or you go just below the average FPS that you find in game. That way you give yourself some GPU headroom well below, and that gives you stability, but then you don't get as many frames, and you're in less demanding areas, you can't like get that back. So for example, if you set, let's say you can get 90 FPS, but you can't times 2 all the way up to 180. You could use adaptive frame generation or some combination of integer scale. However, what that does is not really allow you to be flexible with the FPS, right? Like you're at this solid number the whole time, but you're never really being able to tap the maximum of a given area. So what this is doing for us here with this app is it's dynamically adjusting the base FPS depending on the area. And so you're getting the most input that you possibly can with all the technology running at the same time, other than just lowering it, being stuck at that number. It's solid, it runs the way it's supposed to run the whole time, right? It's not updating, but it's also not going back up. So right now the game is running at 85 FPS max on max settings at 1440p on the 4060 Ti. So native 1440p. So if I go here, do display, no DLSS, anything like that to help us along, just so you can see like the raw performance of what it's doing. And I have a very small FPS thing in the corner, but if you want to see, it's running at 100% at 85 FPS or so. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and start lossless scaling fixed. Okay, so you should be able to see that we're no longer at the 85 FPS, we're at 66, and that is getting us to 133 FPS or so. So you can see that I don't have it capped necessarily. It's pretty much running free, but it's also still essentially using 100% of the GPU. If I go here, it's at like 96, 97. So when we turn that on, it has dipped a little bit to give some headroom on using this, which I think Lossless Scaling just like does on its own. So we're getting upwards 145, 168, etc. So it's kind of just moving around. We want 160. So we're going to unscale, and we are going to come over here, and we're going to start the Dynamic FPS Limiter. And then come back over to the game. I'm going to pull up the FPS, and as you can see now, my current cap is 95 on the monitor up here. Yep, but the FPS itself is down in the 80s. The current GPU usage is 55%, and then it just jumps back up. So I'm hoping that you can see over in this corner over here, yeah, the numbers for the GPU utilization. So moving around this map, we're getting like 80 FPS or so, and it's just holding that at 70%. So it's dynamically adjusting it for us. Now, another use case of this without lossless scaling or anything is competitive situations like competitive FPS, right? So let's say you're trying to get a specific frame rate and you want to keep your utilization a certain point so that it doesn't tank when something heavy happens. You would have the app do the scaling for you on the FPS, so it'll drop for you, but it won't just freeze up or crash. But that helps you to maintain the flow of the FPS that you have on screen to be able to respond, right? Because it's about, this app in particular is about the input latency, or how it feels versus how it appears, which is what the focus of also scaling frame generation is. So again, the weedy, we're going to come back to this empty area over here. All right, so this area is even heavier because it's got fog and all that other kind of stuff. So we're just going to stand around for a 75 FPS. Let's see if it can go up or if this is just the max. All right, so it went back up to 75 after dropping 70. So it looks like that's about as strong as we can get it with the app running. What about like some action? So let's load a spot. So now the cap is 90 because of the loading screen and all of that. Okay. So we're getting 80 FPS. All right, so that held 80 FPS while we were fighting, attacking, and everything. So around between 80 and 70%. So you see what this has kind of done. So it's in a way found like the limit itself without us needing to cap to 60 on our own. So we've got the upper limit at 80% and then the lower at 70%. So above or beneath that, it's going to try to float in between. that just happens to coincide a stable frame rate of like 60 to 120. Now we could have done that manually, but as we saw earlier, like while it didn't give us the ability to scale up or come down, now in the fight, we were just at 60 over 120, or in that specific area after we turned on lossless scaling frame generation with the dynamic limiter. So now in this section again, with the 80-60 to 80-70, it's bumped us up, right? We can get upwards of almost 70. See, look. So in this area, it doesn't have to stay at the 60 FPS. It went and just found more space because of the headroom to increase the FPS on screen, which that in particular is increasing our responsiveness. And because of that, then lossless scaling is able to then times 2 more frames onto the screen. But what if we use adaptive frame generation instead? So I'm going to turn this back off. All right, so we're going to come up on this screen. We're going to change this to adaptive and leave it at 160 and 160. And then we're going to stop this and then go back to 160. So target is 160. We have set the frame rate limit as what we want maximum. Usually that's the refresh rate monitor. Well, we had the same over here. Okay, so coming back over here, I'm gonna go ahead and load up the sprite one more time so we can see what's where we are, like in the build of the fight, right? So we're at 80 something FPS, depending on where I'm looking in this scene. You can get kind of eddy. Besides Rostreus, shoot some arrows here while I run around. Okay, so now we are going to use adaptive frame gen. Okay. So let's let this run for a bit and see where it lands us. We're almost, because our target is 160, all right? So we are actually able in this game to kind of hover around that spot from 60 FPS. And if I show again, some of those numbers, the reason I'm not leaving this up is some of the numbers are off, right? Like the temperature is actually around 68 degrees C and not 29. That'd be amazing. So we're near the upper limit here. Now we want to come over here. The upper GPU usage limit is 80. We're going to start this and come back over and then let it warm up, as it were. Okay, so it's telling us our GPU usage over here is like 86%. And we can see that it's actually kicked in now because it's holding this 50 on the FPS. So we're able to do a couple of other things on this system. And because the usage is down, we at the same time also aren't using as much for like the heat and all that kind of jazz. See, like how earlier I was running at, there's about 170 watts. This card, I can get this card up to like 180 watts running. But right now, we're getting 160 FPS for the smoothness. It's locked us in this area to a base frame rate of 50, while at the same time, because it's working on that GPU utilization, has lowered our wattage usage. Now, there's a discrepancy here from the usage in the FPS limiter and what's being displayed by RiverTuner. But I'm more
likely to be in line with what's up here. So it's still gonna find itself, right? The current cap is 55. I had it set to 2 seconds before it determines if it's going to go up or not. So see how 2 seconds is under 70, so it jumped back up over usage, but that still holds us at 55. It's not enough to force it up. I could play with the settings a little bit. I could bring that GPU usage limit back up to 90%. And we can do that, and you'll see, say it'll stop, and let's do the 90. Let's quick save it, and then start it back up. You give it a moment. And see how 90% utilization now tries to put more of a focus on 60 FPS. Now, over here, it's still showing 160 as like the cap. That is supposed to adjust down in here also, so I'm not sure why that isn't picking up on it. Maybe it's because of the scaling. So let me turn that off and see if that's what's happening. Yeah, so the scaling is affecting that. So see how now it's back up to 80 where we were before. So all the way in the corner here, there's 80 FPS. And that's the cap that we're currently at before applying lossless scale. So the game found this limit for us. Now, if I cut this back to, let's say, 80. So we're just sitting with this again. So now that I gave it a limit of 80, it has done some adjusting for the parameters. And so see how it's back down. So it's working with that GPU utilization. When we stopped and adjusted it, it was at 100. So that's why it was in the 90s, etc. But then it found itself coming back down. And then if we use the dynamic, we pretty much lost 20 FPS. But we're still above 60, but we still have the headroom. And so for this particular area, see it drop down to 50 even. Now we're at 55, and it should make its way back up. Well, it's trying to make its way back up to 60. Again, this game, it really just depends on where you are and what you're looking at. So the reason I want to show this is because you can set this app to, again, it doesn't have to be with lossless scaling in particular. You can do this just with Call of Duty. But see how the frame rate limit now is at 55, but it's holding it there because that's what was found at the time. So still little artifacts here and there. If you want it to be more aggressive, then you could increase the lower limit or increase the upper limit to make it try to go even more. Because right now it's just comfortable. So let's say you can stop and you go back to 75. Quick setting it, start. And then we're just gonna let this thing find itself. So I just want to show this app in action in the hopes that it can get others to post how they use the app and their results so that we can give the developer
more input and feedback. I think this is a really great idea in use case, rather than specifically addressing FPS and locking it. You can address the GPU utilization, and by focusing on it, because you're still adjusting FPS, but by focusing on the percentage, you allow the FPS to be or high as or as low as it needs to be in a given setting without locking away completely your ability to have as much input responsiveness as possible. So I hope I showed enough of the app in this way. Again, it's a little harder without taking numbers even lower because of how it impacts the GPU with recording it all. But I will get this up and show this app again over here on GitHub. But there'll be a link in the description for the latest version, which is 3.0.2. And try it out for yourself with lossless scaling, without it, and let me know what your thoughts are concerning it.